Okay, so let's take a look at how you can create SQL virtual machine, and we will also take a look at how to connect this SQL virtual machine with our Azure Data Studio for establishing connection for our database use, right? So first thing, I will be accessing my local desktop's Azure Data Studio, and I will open that. Meanwhile, it opens, I will go to Azure portal, then click on either this create a resource option, or I will go to all services. Then within database, I will click on SQL virtual machine, right? I already have one of the instance of SQL virtual machine, but if you want, I can explain the entire process of creating one. So click on create, and it will open another page for configuring the SQL deployment. Now here, as you see, we have SQL virtual machine. You can pick a image, and here we have like free SQL Server license for developer edition on Windows Server 22. Now I will click on create and move to next step. Meanwhile, you see Azure Data Studio is open, and I will close all those surveys, feedbacks and pop-ups, and here we will be establishing new connection. We'll come back to here, but before that we will create a virtual machine. So we start with subscription, right? Default it select, then choose resource group, then virtual machine, right? Then pick the region. Then here we don't require redundancy. Then security type we choose standard, right? Then we already picked the image for SQL Server Developer Edition along with Windows Server. Next we will choose the size. Here you see the size of our VM. I picked 4 vCPUs and 16 GB memory, which will suffice for this sort of requirement. Next I will choose the username, and I will also add password. Now once we have username and password, we will open some ports. Let's choose HTTP, HTTPS and also RDP, right? Now let's move to next option, which is going to be disk. We will encrypt the data and make sure host is properly encrypted. We'll also set the OS disk to standard HDD, right? After that we will make sure to have option delete with VM. Also set the key management to platform manage, because there is no other option for us with current free subscription. Move to the networking tab, and it will create a virtual network for you, or choose from the list. Same with subnet and IP. You can also pick the NIC, set to basic, and we already picked the ports. Now you can also choose delete public IP NIC when VM is deleted. Then there is load balancing option. You can enable disable that. Then comes management. Now for management tab, you can see we have enabled disable identity part, and also we have managed to set the Azure Active Directory option. There is also auto shutdown that you can set when you are not using the VM, right? Next comes your site recovery option. Can enable disable that. Finally, your patch option, right? So I have kept the patch to manual update. Now let's move to monitoring. Here you can enable the alerts, also enable with managed storage account, right? Next we choose advanced option, where we can add the extensions. So do note that whenever you add the extension, it will increase the boot time, right? And so does VM applications that you add would also get pre-installed, but also increase the amount of time it takes for deployment, also for loading up your server the first time, right? Then you can add some custom data to pass on as configuration file or configuration to your provisioned part. Now there is also user data option. You can enable, disable that. Then performance options for your data, right? Next thing, you have host to choose from, where you can see host group. Then we have like capacity reservation, where we can select that. Then proximity placement options, and then simply move to SQL Server setting. Here you can select this connectivity as public. Then we have like port 1433, which is by default. Then I will set SQL authentication so that I can connect to Azure Data Studio or any other app for that matter, right? Then comes your login name and password, right? And then storage configuration, which is selected for us, along with instance setting, which is also selected. Then automated patching, which is enabled. Then comes your automated backup, which is disabled so far. Click on next. For tags, we can organize our VM with our resource, you can see, and then use the tags for managing it. So I already created one SQL virtual machine with all these options, right? So just go to deploy at the end with review and create. And once you do, you will have your virtual machine deployed like this, right? And here you see you have your monitoring status. Now click on this virtual machine, SQL MS Server. Now here you can see the public IP address. We already have username and we have password. So let's go ahead, create new connection, and here let me clear everything. Now browse to Azure account. You can also add new account if you want. Let's try and find out our VM is listed here. If not, we will have to manually add those details. Now let's try and connect through our traditional means. If this option is not being connected for VM, so we can simply choose connection type, which is SQL Server, right? And then next would be our option to choose parameters. So we add the IP address here. So our IP address is listed here, and I will just paste that. Then I will use SQL login. Here I will use my username, and then I have to use password here, right? After pasting the password, next thing we can do is we can use connect option. So click connect. Let's hope it gets connected. Here you see, you can see the encryption issue. That's because self-signed certificate issue. So let's hope it gets connected, and there we are, connection established. Now we explore the database and tables. So here you see I already have one database here, and inside that we have users table. So I will right click and select top 100 as my first query to server, and I got the result. So that kind of shows you that I established the connection with the SQL virtual machine, and I managed to connect it through Azure Data Studio. I also run one of the queries to fetch all the data. I also got the return in here. I can see all the rows here, 400 total rows or so, and everything is properly formatted exactly as it was uploaded within the users table, right? So what we have done so far here is we created SQL virtual machine instance, then we established the connection of that SQL virtual machine with Azure Data Studio. When everything is done with the query, we managed to get the results here. Now the results are here, and we can also use Azure Data Studio to do further manipulation of data. You can view that in results as well, right? So we are good to go and work as normal now that our VM is running and allowing us connection through SSMS, Azure Data Studio, and any other tool of our choice.